Marisol and the team for organizing our e-talk series that is occupying us today and tomorrow, having incredible speakers visit us here at Iona at the Heinz Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And also a special treat today is our wonderful panel with representation and representatives from IBM. We got a teaser on Monday by Romelia Flores about the topic of AI and how it impacts us. And today we kind of extend that conversation into all that goes into understanding, like, who owns all these things, and if we create something, what is our role here in terms of intellectual property. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christoph Winkler. I'm the endowed professor, founding program director of the Heinz Institute. This is your home when you think about innovation, when you think about entrepreneurship, when you think about figuring out for yourself what could be of interest, or how can I build community in that space. So come here. We have tremendous resources. Our team is here, and attend our event. So first step taken today. The second piece that I would like to mention is I've been asked to introduce Maria Tapia, who will then introduce our distinguished speaker, Romelia and Michael, as part of this panel. So please give me a moment to introduce our wonderful Maria Tapia, who is an Iona alum, and which is really exciting. Bachelor of Science, Computer Science 89, former former IBM, retired IBM and Iona alum and board member in the Arts and Science, as well as the Computer Science Alumni Board. 35 years of experience in the technology industry, worked with the IBM Corporation. Maria held numerous technical leadership roles in IBM software, hardware, and service businesses, application development, project management, sales, technical sales, and service delivery. And a lot of these things sound very entrepreneurial to me. You need those skills. They come in handy. Also in working with teams across many different sectors, finance, insurance, healthcare, public sector. And also Maria also engaged as a program manager with the Global Workforce Diversity Organization, focusing on internal and external programs for the Hispanic constituency and multicultural women. So also extremely important work here. So thank you for your leadership there. Maria has a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Iona, and we don't use this against her, but she's a Master's in Computer Science from RPU, which is IBI is a tremendous accomplishment in and of its own, which is a tremendous institution as well, and an MBA from NYU. Maria's passionate, a little bit of fun facts, passionate about engaging people of all ages to pursue success in technical roles. And she's an avid volunteer, mentor to people around the world. And she's also very generous with her work here at Iona, bringing us together along with Stella Alvo, who made all of this today possible. And that's the fun fact now, passion for needlework that you picked up, and something that I think is also, incredibly exciting to see that you also pursue these kinds of interests, which is wonderful. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you on now to Maria, who will be moderating our panel. Thank you, Romelia and Michael, for joining us today. And I probably spoke longer than I've planned for, but have fun and have a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christoph, for the kind welcome. Thank you, everybody. Iona's been very welcoming and lovely, so thank you. We appreciate it. Before I introduce our distinguished panelists, little audience participation. So who knows what a patent is? Who's heard of a patent? Okay, good. You watched the video? Yeah, maybe. Okay, excellent. And who knows about IBM? Yeah, okay. Somebody works here. Thank goodness he does know. All right. Okay, so next to me are some really amazing technologists and innovators. Together, they have over 100 patents. I'll talk about that. That's very impressive. So why don't we let you introduce yourselves actually briefly about what you do today in your day jobs, and then we'll talk about inventing the future. Thank you.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. I love talking about invention and innovation and just, AI and all kinds of wonderful things. So to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Romelia Flores. I'm known at IBM as a distinguished engineer and a master inventor. Being a distinguished engineer means I'm one of IBM's top technical resources. Being a master inventor means I love inventing and coming up with ideas. I just obtained my 92nd patent this last week, and so I'm proud of that. And I've been at IBM all my career. So I went to the University of Texas in Austin. I studied computer science as well. So I'm also a computer scientist and did a lot of, creation of IBM's data products. So I started in the development labs writing, SQL queries and optimizing databases, and also a lot of green screen technology. So think of old archaic technology that I came up with for the IBM company, and it's still running in production today. Proud of that too. And I get to focus right now in what we call our public market team, which is state and local government. So I work with a lot of states across the United States and help them understand AI. So I've met with a lot of CIOs from across the states, as well as healthcare and education. So I've met with a lot of provosts and deans from across different universities in the US. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike. Let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. So my name is Michael Shute. It's great to be back and great to see everybody interested in this topic. I'm in Iona college back then, university. Now I got to get used to that a little bit, but it's great to be here from that perspective. I know when I was a student, I had no idea what a patent was. I had no idea what importance it was. And it's not something I learned for many years until, farther along my journey. So at this point right now, I'm considered a senior technical staff member. So I'm a senior architect, builder of many applications. So I work on our internal portfolio in the office of the cybersecurity. So I'm building products that help secure the enterprise at scale, that govern how things, processes work, policies work, enforce them, and assess risk and compliance against them. I've done a lot of work recently just understanding, responsible AI, understanding how we use it, encouraging a lot of people to get involved in doing it at scale. And, one of the things I do in my side time is patenting. Patenting has been something that's been a passion for me because it lets me go explore areas that I don't normally work in. I did security many years, decades ago, before I actually got into cybersecurity formally. And I've got over 25 of them to my name at this point, and I'm also a master inventor as well. So it's really a privilege to get to talk to you today, and happy to share my experiences.
Can you get, yeah, okay. I'm okay. Sorry. So, just to get everybody, we're going to take a little trip back in time, and we're going to ask you to think about what was your first patent? What was your first idea that that you actually pursued as a patent? Not your first idea, obviously, but that you actually decided to pursue as a patent. And what was that process like? Finding out about the process, finding people to work on it with you. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, so for me, certainly I joined IBM as an intern. So this was many, many moons ago, and we would write products in development. And, I had my green screen technology. And what they used to do back in the day was they'd have IP lawyers come in and look at the products that were being created and produced out of IBM. And so the patent lawyer would sit down and he'd say, wow, this looks pretty compelling, or that looks pretty compelling. They'd go back to the development teams and they'd find out who created those aspects of the product. And then they'd interview us and they'd start asking us questions about what we had done so that we could describe how did I go about implementing the algorithms within what I had created, those kinds of things. So it wasn't me saying, I think I've got something patentable. It was more the patent lawyers looking at the product and saying, this concept right here looks pretty complex. It looks like something that could be patented. And then they started to kind of nurture us and help us understand, okay, how would we write up the patent? How would we describe it? And how, importantly, how would we make sure that it functions the right way? And are there other enhancements that maybe we didn't put into the product that we had thought of that would, certainly deserve the right to be patented? So a patent means you own the intellectual capital that you're patenting. And I think that's kind of what got it at least myself started in the patenting realm. I think after I moved out of the development lab, I kind of thought, well, only developers at IBM should be creating patents, and that was a fallacy on my part. When I moved to other parts of IBM, I wasn't inventing for a while. And certainly after a little while, I kind of said, oh, people in sales can also invent. And so I started getting back into the patenting world. And I think for me, part of what nowadays drives me is I get exposed to a lot of, young people and a lot of energetic ideas, and I love collaborating with them to come up with how would we go about solving problems that they view as problems today. When I'm working with clients, a lot of clients will tell me, here's how we run our port, or here's how we run our educational institution, and here's the kinds of concepts, the as is state that we have today. And I start just daydreaming and coming up with, what would I do with this? How would I change it? What would I inject in here to make it funner, better for everyone to be able to do something? And that's where a lot of my patentable ideas nowadays come from. So it's just a matter of, looking at a challenge that someone has and then saying, how would I address that challenge? And then coming up with the ideas behind it. Today, the process is pretty simple at IBM. You work on a small team of maybe 4 people. You write up your idea. You describe how it would work. So you start out with what is the problem? Then you say, okay, given that problem, what's a high-level description? And then you write the details of how it would work out. Usually you're looking at about 4 to 5 pages of documentation total. Then it gets reviewed internally by what we call our invention disclosure teams. And then finally our IP lawyers review the relevant ideas. And then they take care of submitting them into the system so that the USPTO kind of finally gets the application, shown to them so that they can process the application. And sometimes, some of my patent applications have taken maybe a year or 2, in some cases, maybe 6, 7 years before they become a formal patent. So you have a patent kind of application at the time that you submit to the USPTO, and it may take a while before you get a grant, right? And the grant can take anywhere from I've had one that maybe took 9 months, but the majority are more along the lines of 2 to 3 years, and then there's some that have taken 7 years.
Yes. So when I reflect on how I got started, so it's interesting to hear you saw that, only developers can do this. I've been a developer most of my career. And I had the concept that, this is something that mainly research is doing. The people that are like nowadays, think about the people developing the AI models, really, making all the magic that we see out of all the great tools that are out there. The people doing quantum engineering, they're the ones who do patenting, not me. I'm just developing programs. I mean, I'm not doing anything special. Couldn't be more wrong about that. Early in my career, I submitted one, and I had that, concept in mind that, okay, this isn't for me, but I had a friend who wanted to do it, and we didn't write it up well. Just as Romelia had mentioned, you've got to really have that great documentation. It's not a lot, but you've really got to clearly explain what you're doing, articulate it. We didn't do that well, and it got rejected. It didn't even get submitted to the U.S. Patent Board. The IBM didn't think there was enough value to take it across. So I didn't patent for a long time, and I wasted a lot of opportunity not doing that. And it probably wasn't until like a decade later, so midway through my career, that I got more involved in it. At that point, I got a good mentor, and he really explained to me, he's like, you really can patent just about anything. Now, I want to do anything that's got value to the company because I'm doing it on behalf of IBM. But when I look at patents, I look around the real world, and as I have a problem, I note it down because, I think the mother of all invention is a problem. So start with a problem in life. What really annoys you? Whether it's something in your job, in your coursework, just day to day, I just note that. Okay. And, then I would come ideate with people. So I always find inventing is best to work with a group of people. So Romelia mentioned, typically they encourage, all right, do a patent circle. So, whether it's, 2, 4, 6, get with a group of friends, people you can be honest and transparent about, and say, how can we solve this? How can we make it better? And once we kind of figure out a way that we can make it better, okay, let's review. Is this something that not being done today? Because again, if the problem it's not getting solved already, is this existing out there? So we'll do some checking of, is any art exist today that's pretty similar? And that's how I got started. I think of the first time I invented the second time around, once I got more serious about it. I was at a conference and people were giving a talk, and me being a technical guy, I wanted to be really hands-on with the technical portion of it. And they were talking about the high-level stuff. I'm like, it's not interesting. So, I was on my laptop, let me multitask a little bit. So just like that, but I thought about it, like, okay, it'd be nice if the presenter knew, hey, speed up, a lot of the audience was like me. They weren't as interested in this talk. Speed up, get to the part that we wanted to know about. So you think about like on like Zoom or Teams, there some of them have like the turtle for slowing down, the rabbit for speeding up. Okay, that's like feedback, but I'm like, all right, that didn't exist back then. So I was thinking, well, how could presenter know? So we said do something like that, but in order to let them know that people aren't necessarily paying attention, see that access point right there? Look at your Wi-Fi access point. See the traffic that's coming through it. If people are spiking traffic, they're probably not paying attention as much as they are. So that idea didn't get filed. It didn't get submitted, but it got put to the public domain. So IBM, if they don't want to take it forward, they will publish it and say, all right, well, this is not an idea that we're going to leverage and take money off of, but we want everybody to use it and it's publicly available. But that really, that really got me going. I was like, okay, cool. Like I could, equate anything, any idea into a patent. So, second time around, I said, all right, back then I think of, I go back to my phones, and I'm glad I didn't have a phone in college, because who knows what that would be recording. But I had cousins who were around this age, and I'm like, okay, how many pictures are they taking that they regret and go on the cloud and stuff like that, where, all right, maybe there's something that's in the background that they shouldn't necessarily be. And, you don't want stuff to be seen there. So we spent some time and said, all right, let's make like a selfie filter so that, okay, if something's there, and let's say I've got, a nice glass of fill in the blank and I don't want that to be there. Okay, the selfie filter could prevent that from being uploaded, being saved to the device. And that did get filed. And that was one of my earliest ones that I really remember. It's like, okay, so I can look at anything in life, any sort of problem, challenge, note it, and try to see how does this equate back to possibly a technology and implement it. So it's really being open about anything that you have, and just be mindful that, okay, everybody can be an inventor. It's not, superpower. I said, if I was in this place 25 years ago, I really think it's not for me. It really can be you. And, I wish I got started earlier. So like I said, I'm very excited to see everybody interested in this, because anybody can invent.
Okay, that was great. So, sorry about that. So we heard a couple of things, right? One is that invention isn't something that you do by yourself. It's something that you're doing with other people. Maybe it's because someone encouraged you to take your idea further. Maybe it's because someone's helping you document, because it's a big, complex thing. So I think, let's keep that in mind. If you've got a couple of friends who know about your problem, know about your idea, that's who you want to sit down and talk to. And I also heard the word mentor. It sounded like, Romelia, you were lucky you had people guiding you through the beginning of the patent process, because they were looking to document what you were doing, because the company wanted to protect all of the things that you were creating. So you were lucky a mentor found you. But Mike, you said that you had a mentor who helped you with the second patent after you weren't successful. Can you tell us a little bit about that mentor, and what was it that helped you to continue that journey?
Yeah. So first, the mentor really explained why this is important for the company. I didn't have that perspective, and that patenting isn't just for, in my mind, research back then, or is really my development. It really could be for anybody in the company. So IBM is a technical company. You don't need to be technical to patent. There's a lot of different roles. There's sales roles, marketing roles, comms roles. So, as a coder, as a technical person, okay, do you need to be technical? No. Everybody has great ideas. So it doesn't matter, what subject you're studying. everybody can be patenting because patenting applies to everybody. So my mentor gave me that great background on this is really applicable to everybody. And then he guided me through the process. Really, what's the right content to put in when we write something up? So when we write up a disclosure, okay, we have to really give a good explanation of what's the background behind this? Why is this different from present what problem? So why are we doing this? What's the problem we're looking to solve? Then, okay, show that this hasn't been done before. So we got to give some art searching to say, by art, I'm looking for anything that invents the space today. So I might look at other patents. I might look at publicly available articles. So here's what exists today. So I didn't know how to search that the right way. I didn't know that there's resources to do. And, I think even now, if I was teaching someone, as I teach people, you got to do that securely and safely. You can't just go into AI and say, hey, I'm looking to patent this XYZ. All right, great. That's going to, if you're on, Google, let's go to Google. Thanks. You might as well give them that idea if they mine their stuff. So, do it safe, secure, use, like DuckDuckGo, I think like that, where they're not capturing a lot of information. There are secure sites where you can search publications and things like that we use internally. So knowing how to search and what to put down, searching is an art on its own because it's like, I can't just write, I'm looking to patent for, selfie filter. I've got to think about how to articulate it in a certain way that I'm finding the right information, and working with several people helps that. And then just being able to articulate what are we doing? Why is this novel? Because a patent, of course, needs to be, a novel idea, but also part of your novelty, it's got to be, got to have that, what I call, or I think what the industry calls like a non-inventive step. So what's unique? What's not obvious that like, oh yeah, I wouldn't think to do it that way. So clearly saying, hey, this is what we're claiming as our novelty. And then just in detail, okay, explain it so that someone who's skilled in the arts could invent it at that point. You don't have to be able to build it, but you do have to give a blueprint. You can't just say, you know what, I'm going to write this up and I'm going to give it to my AI black box and it's going to spit this out. Doesn't work that way. You've got to at least explain, all right, if you're going to rely on AI to spit this out, well, how's that work? Go a little bit deeper. So don't have to do it, but you got to have the blueprint there that someone could follow who's skilled in an area could do it. So that mentor gave me that background and showed me prior ones that he submitted successfully. This is what it is. So, really kind of changed my mindset of, okay, in order to do this, it's not one, the mountain that I made it out to be from who was able to do it. I thought also it was going to be a lot of work to do it. It's not a lot if you know what you're doing. And then just having the experience to rely upon. And that's always important with anything in life. Learn from experts. It's take advantage of the resources that are there. So that was important.
Thank you, Mike. And all of you here, right? You've got this great center. You've got people who are here. I understand that in your teams, you're going to have coaches. There's going to be people who are going to be helping you think through this. So it's about identifying something that you think is novel or something new, right? A new idea, a new solution. It doesn't have to be technology per se, because we've had patents for a long time. I think there's a famous one on how do you hang a toilet roll or something, toilet paper, I don't know, there's something like that. But it's identifying something that's new. It's getting some information about it, talking to your friends, your colleagues, your team members. What is it that we've identified? Talking to a coach who can help you identify, is this really new? Has no one ever before done this? And getting some help in doing that. Now, all of you are here for your challenge and you're thinking about some novel ideas. So you're set to do this, but all of you two have day jobs. How do you make sure that you're always inventing, or what helps inspire you, I guess? You told us a little bit about that, Romelia, which is spending time with people, but what else helps to inspire you to go through this process?
I think there's a couple of things. I think anytime you get in a patent circle, I think that automatically should inspire you. You're in a team of everybody wanting to strive to do better, right? I think back on in my history in my career, there was a gentleman that I worked with. His name was Len Hand, and he was very different than me. He was a networking dude, and I'm more of an application person. But, one of the things that, people would look at us and they think they're an odd pair of people. They are geeks. They love programming. They love doing network infrastructure and setting up secure environments and doing all kinds of, technical things. But what we love more than anything was coming up with ideas, right? And so I'd go to him and I'd say, hey, Len, I have an idea. And he'd look at it and he'd say, okay, let me think about this and I'm going to one up your idea. And so he'd go away for a day or two and then he'd come back and then he'd say, I got something else for your idea. And I'd say, okay, what is it? And he'd tell me and I'd say, I don't like it because of this. And then he'd say, well, what else could we do with this? And we started like just collaborating with each other, right? So from the outside, people would look at us and say they're just competing with each other. But from the inside, what we were doing was helping us elevate each other's ideas, right? And so together, I think he and I probably have about maybe 40 patents together. And it's that synergy that you get with someone when you're working on a project. And then one of the things that we wanted, we were kind of the leaders in the center that we worked in, and there were other leaders. And we said, why would someone want to work on our team versus working on some of the other leaders' teams? And I said, because we're going to help them get more patents. And so it became a game for us to, in any one of our projects, we said, oh, in this project, I want to get a minimum of 2 patentable ideas implemented, so that we would kind of do that and set the team some goals. And we tell the team, you all have to create with us. And it just becomes infectious when you start thinking this way and you start, thinking about how do I take something and elevate it and elevate it. And even like my own daughter, she came one summer and she was interning at IBM, and she made the mistake of coming up to me and she said, I'm completely bored here at IBM. And I said, oh my God, you're working at one of the most amazing companies in the world with leading edge technology, and you're telling me you're bored. Well, they don't give me assignments. They don't tell me what to do. And I said, okay, but you have a mother that's an inventor. Your mother's telling you go invent. And she's like, how do I invent? And I said, I want you to go back and read about this new little thing called AI and what it's having an impact on. How would you use AI at your university? She went to Baylor University and she was like, well, I don't know that we do anything with AI at our university. And this was probably about 15 years ago that she was doing this. And so she kind of said, I said, that's exactly why you want to think about it, because you're probably the only person in the world whose mother's telling them, go think about this. And so go out there and start thinking about how would I use this new technology to help me do something better at my university. So I said, make me a list. I don't want you to write me patentable ideas. You have no clue what a patentable idea is. Just make me a list of your thoughts. And I don't want anybody else's thoughts. I just want your thoughts. Bring me back a list of, 7 to 10 ideas. So she went off for about a week, 2 weeks, and then she comes back and she has her list and she says, I don't think any of my ideas are very good. And I said, okay, why don't you let me be the judge of that as opposed to you saying my ideas aren't very good? So she sat down with her list. I looked at her list and I said, okay, yep, you're right. This idea is no good. This idea is no good. This one, what's in this one? And she started to describe it to me. And I said, now that one has potential. And I said, let's move on to the next one. We started discussing, and there were probably 3 ideas on her list that I said, if I were you, I would spend more time writing these up. And I want you to start with just tell me what the problem is. And at a high level, tell me what your solution is. So she went back for another week or 2 and she says, they're still not giving me assignments. And I said, yeah, but I gave you assignments, get them done. And so she went off. I tell you what, in that matter of the summertime, she came back with about the 3 different ideas. We submitted them together and she got 3 patentable ideas by the age of 25. Right? So you can do these things, right? It's just a mindset. If you tell yourself, I can't do this, I don't want to do this. And then she had the coup de grace to tell me, well, my friends are making fun of me. And I said, why are your friends making fun of you? And well, my mother's real geeky. And I said, yeah, but we already knew that. So why is that? Why does that bother you? And she's like, well, they were telling me that the only reason I got an invention was because of my mother. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, did you tell them anything? And she was like, tell them what? And I said, did you tell them my mother invents with lots of IBM new hires? My mother gets other people going on inventing. That's what she kind of does here at IBM. So don't be ashamed of your mother helping you out. Know that the way your mother helped you out, I was probably tougher on you than I am with a lot of our new hires because I knew people would look at you differently because you are my daughter. And so it's important for you to understand all of us can innovate, all of us can kind of invent, and it's just a matter of standing up, having the courage to do it. And I tell you what, she's proud of those 3 patents that she has, and she'll tell people, yeah, my mother helped me get my 3 patents. And I said, but more importantly, they're your ideas and they're your implementation that we put into them. And so be proud of all of that. And I'm proud of her. In fact, we have a patent wall. One of the things we do at IBM is we put up patent walls with lists of patents and the inventors' names are on there. And I went through and I highlighted, look at this. I took a picture of the patent wall. I said, your name is on the IBM wall. So her name is out there as well as mine, and we're Googleable. So if you do a Google search, you can find me out there. You'll find her out there.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's so cool that you're able to do that. Have bonding experience with your daughter, and I think it's really important. It goes back to that whole having a good trusted what we call patent circle. So could be peers, could be friends, could just be people you know. I actually like inventing mostly with people who, one, we have enough mutual respect that we can be open and honest. And, sometimes you have to say, out of those 10 ideas, 7 of them are not. Like, you got to move on. Like, some of them just are not going to be non-starter. You get to a spot, it's like, no, it's not going to be there. But it's great to have different minds and perspectives. So, don't go this alone. Go with people with different, unique ideas. So, I loved how you said, all right, developer networking. That's important. I'm a developer. My one person I did a lot of stuff with. All right, he's a database guy. I had no idea about database stuff back when I was doing inventing back then. So at least the core data essentials that that person was doing. So it gave us different ideas. I remember one time we were talking about different compute, and I knew about cloud computing. He knew about more database. We put stuff together. We said, all right, well, let's dynamically do something with the way cloud, calculates cost. So having different mindsets is helpful. There's plenty of ideas, like I said, we get stuck on, and okay, great. Let's move on. Let's not take those forward. And to kind of answer Maria, why do I do this? Recognition is one thing in the company that I may drive people. It might be cool to say. It's a nice, factor from it. It doesn't drive me. What really drives me is I like to solve problems. That's if I could do one thing for life, just give me problems and I want to solve them. That is what I love best. Wake me up at midnight with a problem. Not that hopefully it's not a critical system, but it's going to cause financial value. But wake me and let's go. I'm all for that. So give me a problem to solve, and I want to figure it out. So and then having to me it's a creative outlet where I get to explore some area that, like I said, might not be something that I do day to day, but it keeps me fresh. It lets me get deeper in an area that I might not, get into. I remember one patent I did more recently, like AR, VR. That's, getting pretty out there nowadays. But, a few years ago, it wasn't as much. And as it's some space that I'm going to be working on, probably not, maybe a little bit with some of the security implications, but it's definitely not going to be a primary thing. But it's something I had to learn about a bit just to understand, all right, how does this all work? Go into the implementation stack a little bit. So it just lets me explore areas and break boundaries that are there. Finding time is, a challenge too. And also, working for a group of people helps me with that because if you're working with people, keep each other accountable. That's always important. So, if you take it alone, it's like, all right, I'll do it tomorrow. Well, you're probably never going to do it. But if I'm with a group of people, okay, I owe this to them. I'm not going to let, someone down. So, all right, I'll make sure it gets done. So, find a good, group of people that you really trust, respect. Hopefully they have diverse ideas and opinions. You don't want people thinking the same because then you don't get as much, back and forth. One show I loved watching was, probably over a decade ago, been 15, House MD. And he'd always if you ever saw it, the premise was he'd always solve this medical problem, but he'd do it just based on the most random thing or interactions with people. And that's a lot of times how things come up. So throw out crazy ideas, because sometimes those crazy ideas, oh, wait, that crazy idea might not work. But if you take like 90% of that and add 10% here, then that's going to work. So, don't be afraid, throw everything against the wall. You never know what's going to stick with patenting. So, that's why I do it. And that's kind of my advice for kind of getting started with a group.
So can I add a little bit? So one of the thoughts going through my head was, like Maria, I worked a lot with our Hispanic community at IBM. And so one of the challenges that we had at IBM was in Latin America, we didn't have any master inventors. We didn't have inventors. And so they said, Tony Martinez and myself were both Hispanic and we were master inventors. And they said, we need you two to go do a Latin American tour. Go down to Mexico, go down to, Guadalajara. We have a big lab in Guadalajara, and then go down to Brazil and get these people inventing, right? And so we went down there, and what we did was we did a patent event, right? And so Tony and I were like, are we going to be able to come up with ideas for people to invent? And I said, oh, I always come up with ideas. And I said, you know what I'm going to have them do? And he was like, what? And I said, I want them to tell me what they do here in Guadalajara. And I want them to describe they build a whole lot of storage devices and the processes that they go through for inventing these storage devices. And I said, I'm going to run a design activity. I am a design thinker. And so I love running design activities. And I had them go through and describe, here's our as-is process every day. Here's kind of how we go through things. And I said, okay, now as you describe this, where would you say your major pain points are? Oh, right in here, there's a big problem because we haven't done this, we don't do that, we don't do this. And over here, and I said, okay, those are 2 areas of pain. So what are we going to put in place to help fix and solve those areas? And so that's how I started them kind of thinking about, their environment and what they're doing there in Guadalajara, because it got them focused on how do I improve what I'm doing in my day job? How do I improve the processes that I'm focused on? And then we started slowly getting them to where we did get our first master inventor. His name was Manuel Avalos Vega. And then we got another one and we got another one. And then they said, Romelia, make sure you bring in some women. So we got, several women. We started invention circles with just women. And we got our first master inventor that was female out of Mexico City. And so it's important to, look at things from the lens of someone else because they'll be able to tell you what their challenges or pain points are. And then you help them solve these pain points. And to date, these are some of the people that I love inventing with because they go out of their way to help me out. They know I'm busy, that I don't have the time. And they're like, Romelia, just throw an idea out at us and we'll run with it and we'll document it and we'll get back to you with our rendition of things. And then you can tweak it and we'll get ideas submitted faster, quicker, better. And so I love inventing with them and they're great folks. Diversity of thought is a key, kind of thing to look at when you're inventing. Who is different from me with a whole other perspective that can bring different insights to the invention.
Wow, some really great stuff there. So you want a group of people that you can be honest with, who you can get honest feedback on your idea. So these are your friends. And you want people who don't think like you because you need different experiences, different perspectives. And there's probably someone who's really good about complaining in that group. So that's the person who's got all the ideas because they see the things that are wrong that could be better. So I think that's the lesson I got today, is that the people who are complaining are probably the ones who've got all those ideas. You just need to harvest them, get them to explain to you how they think things should be different, and you're good to go. So that's fantastic. Thank you, guys. Back to a little bit of mechanics. So we've heard a lot about the patent process. We heard it can take a while because you've identified the idea, you've documented how it's different, you've, got it vetted internally, there's lawyers that are going to be involved and so forth. But then once you submit the application, there is a little bit of time that you have to wait. So can you just give us a little perspective on patent pendings? What does that mean for your idea? Are there other ideas that you can build on that one, using some of that, or what would you do while you're waiting to hear if this is something that you can call your own?
Sure. So first of all, when you have something that's pending, at that point, it's been filed to the patent office. So, the idea is written up. If you have any, sort of, here within IBM, we've got a review board that'll, vet patents. It'll ensure that, okay, this is a quality patent that we want to take forward for the company. Patenting isn't free. There are different tiers of patenting you do. If, patent pending, you do a provisional patent, which does protect it for a little bit of time. That's cheaper. But, in order to patent something, you do have to spend a fee for it. So you got to make sure, all right, if I'm going to do this, am I going to get value out of it? And then once you have enough, value, enough novelty, okay, great, I'm going to take it forward. And then we have our legal people spend the time to write it up, and then it's submitted to the patent office. And as Romelia is saying, sometimes it's quick. Sometimes the patent office, depending on the importance of it. If it's in a new hot space, you think about all the AI inventions that are coming, a lot of work that's happening right with quantum. There's a lot of activity in that space. So the patent office is probably going to prioritize reviewing those a little bit more quickly, and you'll get an answer. Yeah, is this something that they accept, that they're going to grant and issue the patent to you, or not? But while that's happening, you should just be working on the next. It's you don't wait until it's done. You just keep cranking out new ones, and I always just, once it's out there and filed and patent pending, okay, great. I just go work on the next. At that point, I hope I hear some good news, but you don't really have too much insight about when it's going to come, so you can't be mindful of that. I hope it comes. Everybody, I think, would be a great accomplishment to have a patent. But okay, the best shot you're going to have, if finally in the battle, keep firing, taking more shots at it. So you don't wait while it's patent pending. If it does get issued, anytime it's patent pending, you'll get a file date. So at that point, if anyone was to use that idea after that file date, okay, you do have legal protection after that date. It might take several years for it to get confirmed, but don't wait on it. Keep working on the next ideas. So patent pending is just all about, great, it's out there. You're gonna eventually hear about it, but work on the next. You can never have too many patents.
The only thing I'd add to that is, you never know where things kind of take you. And I know, a lot of times people are like, okay, who is this crazy woman we're going to meet and we're going to talk to? If you wanted to, you could probably go out and do Google search on Mike and find out a little bit about his patent history, and you'll get a good feel for what is he invented in, what do these inventions mean. I know I've had customers that Google me and they'll look me up, and then they'll come in and they'll say, oh, I read about this invention. And I'm like, I have over 90 of them. I don't know which one that one was, but they'll talk to me about my inventions. I know my son, he was talking to one of his friends, and his friend was over at the house, and he said, dude, do you know your mom is Googleable? And I was like, and he was like all embarrassed to talk to me. And he's like, I said, I'm just a person. Like, I love inventing. I'm just a person. But it is important for you to think through. I don't want to invent the toilet brush cleaners and things like that, because people will know what you're inventing. So keep that in mind as you move forward in your competition. It is about your reputation. It is about what you want to stand for. So a lot of my inventions are very project related, or very work related, as well as facility related in Guadalajara, just to, get them inventing as well. And the majority of my stuff is mainly a lot of the client work that I'm doing in mental health and coming up with education solutions and kind of ideas in these realms lately, because that's what I thrive in and that's what I'm working on. And right now I think I have about 10 ideas pending. I'm not waiting for them all to come through. My son's goal for me, he says, before you retire, you need to have 100 inventions. And I was like, I think before I retired, I needed 75, and I've got that. So it's interesting. Everyone's perspective is different.
All right. Okay. Can we take some questions from the audience now? Yeah, go ahead.
Style of patent is you're like individually working without any like big company backing. Because you guys mentioned that IBM gave you guys a lot of support.
Yeah, so I think the biggest path to barrier to entry is probably having some legal expertise. You do need a lawyer to write up. If you go, have you actually looked at like what a patent is? And like that's one of the things that scared me away. I'm like, I can't write this thing, and I can't write it now. Like there's a certain way they're written. So there's lots of different claims, lots of different prior art. There's different drawings, diagrams. I will draw some of those diagrams, but at a different perspective. But there's a certain format they have to look and feel. So having legal lawyer support is important. You do need that to make sure the patent gets formatted the right way. So the other barrier to entry is just all right. Understanding, as I kind of said, is all right. What's the right information? So I need to be able to supply the right information to the lawyer to be able to write it up. But for me, if I was taking it outside the corporation, that would pretty much be it. I'd write it up in the same manner that I do, and just say, all right, I've got to engage a lawyer to do it. And I do realize that okay, as I was saying, there's a cost to a patent. So is it going to be worth my the cost to protect at that point? So if I've got something that I really know is novel, that I think is going to make some money, I want to protect my idea and my interest. So I ensure that someone else doesn't use it.
Now, how long do those protections last?
Yes, good question too. So there's a couple different things you could do. So first of all, within the U.S. at least, be careful about when you start to share something, because when you share something, the clock starts ticking. So if I share on social media, hey everyone, guys, I made this awesome program that does XYZ. At that point, the idea has been publicly disclosed, and you have 12 months to file it. There are some things you can do with like a provisional patent where you can also get a little bit of extra protection on top of it, but you really have essentially in most cases 12 months from an idea being disclosed until you have to patent it. And then once you have the patent filed, you're protected at that point. You've submitted it, and anything that happens in between when you file and when it gets accepted, you're protected in between.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'd add is the first to file is the one that gets the patent. So if Mike and I are out there and he shared his nice idea with me, and I have my team in Guadalajara writing up the idea for me, and they get, boom, let's submit it next week, he's hosed, right? So you got to be careful not to be disclosing your ideas to a bunch of people. I know right now I have a really cool idea for education that, that I told you the guy in Guadalajara is working with me on. And I told him, let's not share this with anybody till we can get it filed, and then we'll share it with people, because it's the first to file that gets the invention. It doesn't matter who came up with the idea, right? So you want to make sure you're understanding it's first to file that you need to get to.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I was reflecting on the fact that a patent gives you legal protection, but then there's also the business case, which could align or not. So I'm wondering if there's ever been a time when you felt really proud of your patent, but it ended up not being used because of like business strategy or because someone else came up with a better solution to that same problem, or vice versa, where you felt like it was a pretty simple idea, but it's like punching above its weight in terms of strategy or like financial impact.
Yeah, I think I have combinations of all of the above, right? Some of the ideas that I've had are not brilliant ideas, and so they may not go to what we call as a file. They may get published, right? And I think Mike mentioned, having an idea go to publish. There's no shame in that. I tell everyone at IBM right now, like IBM used to be the leader in this patent submission processes for a long, long time. We're getting pickier about what we invest in and what we're putting in to become a patent. So right now there's a lot of scrutiny on all the ideas that all of us are submitting. So less inventions are getting to be filed. And that's just a cost statement, right? It costs a lot of money to make one idea. Imagine if you have thousands of IBMers submitting ideas, that's a lot of IBM's money. So I would say, I don't worry too much about, the business value. I submit the ideas and try and get it through the door. The lawyers are going to worry about, is this going to have good business value for IBM to own the rights on this particular, idea? I think out of the 92 patent inventions that I have, I've only had one of them make money for the IBM company, right? And that one did make quite a bit of money for the IBM company, and therefore I got extra money as well. So IBM is very good at sharing the wealth. But not all 91 of my ideas have made IBM money, from a financial perspective, right? So I'm just happy that I have one that made money for IBM.
I certainly argue that even though, one had direct financial impact, IBM does a lot of trading of its patents. So I think it adds to our overall portfolio, and they all add money in some respects. It may not all, be an individual direct, but there's a greater portfolio that we have and we sell and we license to others. I do recommend people when they write them up. As Romelia mentioned, there's an IDT board that will review these things. So I sit on one of the many boards that we have, and I review them. And one of the things I do question is why, one, okay, is this novel? Is this taking a non-obvious step? Is it implementable? But also, what value does this actually have? So I try to get in front of it a little bit, and I encourage people as I write up, because I put it in mine too. I say, this is how we can use this. There's a licensing play to this, or you could resell this, or this is something that just I notice other companies into, and they're going to need to do it. So we're going to be able to resell to this people. So as any anything that you're doing as an entrepreneur, you have to have that mindset about, all right, how do we make money from this idea? Yes, the patent protects you that your idea can't be used, but you got to have that also, business case and use case, and say, all right, this is how we're going to realize some money on it too. So I think it's important to have that mindset. And yes, later on it might, there might be other decisions say, all right, we're not going to take it forward for XYZ, but I think if you get in front of it and have that mindset, it does lead to a better write-up. You're thinking about, here's the ways that this could be leveraged. Because I'm always thinking about, like, one, the idea, but two, the use cases. Okay, how are we going to use this thing? So I always, as I write things, I say, all right, user's going to do X, Y, Z. I make it real to people, because then, to me, my idea becomes more marketable and more, one, understandable by the patent board, but two, more likely to get accepted.
Yeah, so I just I want to make sure we hone in on that point. So a patent is a great way of protecting your idea as yours and establishing the ownership, but it could be that you even sell the patent later, that you yourself don't implement it, you yourself don't build a business because maybe your business has a different focus. And that's another way of being able to make money on it. You don't have to build it out, but now you've protected your invention and you're also able to make some funds out of it. Okay, great. I think you had a question. Nope.
Two actually. One of my questions was that how do you protect yourself from patent pirates who just keep stealing tons of ideas? And then another question that I had was, is there a way to use artificial intelligence to simplify the process of the application?
So in terms of patent pirates, they're out there. Beware of them. Do not share your ideas with anyone, right? Share it with your circle that's going to invent with you. But beyond that circle, until that idea is filed with the USPTO, don't share it outside. Don't share it anywhere, because remember, the first to file will get the idea. So I can write it up with my team, and if the IBM processes don't get it filed in a time-effective manner and someone else hears my idea and they go get it filed faster than I can, they'll get the idea and I won't have that. So you want to make sure not to be disclosing ideas, on a whim and just sharing it with everyone. It can be fun, but it can also prevent you from getting that patentable idea. So that was your first question. What was your second question?
I'm going to interject one thing.
Okay.
Some practical things that Mike was mentioning is be careful. Don't post your idea, right? If you're going to put it out on Facebook, you've now started the clock on getting that patented. If you're using searches, if you're using Google, don't use Google search. Make sure that you're going to the library and never use ChatGPT. And we were actually having this conversation. We said there are a lot of free tools out there, but you have to think about, no tool is really free. What's happening is they are getting your information. And that's great, because sometimes what you're getting back is more valuable than the information you provided it. But if it's a drawing, if it's a design, if it's an idea, if it's something that's really your property, and that, be careful what you're using in order to develop it. who you're talking to, what tools you're using, because there are so many out there. You really do need to be careful. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, and I'll share, I was having a conversation with my son. He was working on his thesis, for his master's degree. And he's like, oh, I put my thesis out there in Chat GPT and had it review my thesis. And I'm like, you just gave away your thesis to someone else, right? So be careful with things like that, because pirates are out there and it can happen. And what was the second question?
It was, how do you use artificial intelligence to simplify the process?
Yeah, I think there's two stories there. The first story, there's some folks at IBM that have been using artificial intelligence, maybe Copilot or something like that, to help them with their write-ups. And now we have, like Mike and I have mentioned, these IDT teams that review inventions. You can easily tell when the Copilot wrote up an invention. And so probably over the last 2 months, I know one of the things that was running around the IP law community was, oh my God, these people are using Copilot to help them write inventions. And we need to stop that. So I know at IBM, we are halting all those that look like anything generated by Copilot, and we're closing those things down. First of all, they weren't very useful ideas that got put in the system that way. And then pretty much the IDTs were just going through and closing them anyway, because the ideas were not valid written ideas. So I think you need to be careful with AI tools. Certainly, I've had conversations with the director of the USPTO. Her name is Hope Shimabuku. And one of the things we discussed was, when do you cross the line as to something being your idea versus something being an AI idea? And I think you do need to be cognizant that you can cross that line. And you want to make sure you're being honest about who the inventor of the idea is, because you're going to be held accountable for those ideas that you put out there in the free domain and everything else. So yeah, be careful with things like that.
Yeah, from a perspective of, how can we use AI? Well, I won't give AI all the secret sauce if I'm looking to, all right, a lot of my inventions are not in spaces that I'm an expert in. I may use it as a research tool, help me understand some of the inner workings so that I can help explain it better. If I'm really concerned about it, maybe I'll run a model locally that, I'll wall off, sandbox, so it can't communicate to the outside. So there's a lot of, LLMs you could run on your local system that you could tell don't communicate. If you really want to have a, conversation to help it better and not give it away, because that is always a huge concern nowadays. Anything you put in, it then becomes it's free ideas, free money for everybody else. So be cautious, be careful. So take those right steps. That's when I started shooting back on. We're always kind of taking extra precautions. So like I said, don't put everything out there. If you want to do something, all right, I will abstract stuff enough so that you don't give away all the secret recipe that's going to make it special. And like I said, if I really want to get a little deeper and I'm really concerned, okay, I could just run it on my local machine. There's a lot of powerful models that are really small nowadays that you just, download a tool like Olam or something like that. Great. I have something on my laptop. I can run it. It doesn't take a huge amount of compute. So there's ways you can use it, but just use it safely, use it securely.
I'm sure there are like thousands of ideas in this room alone. With the great idea comes a greater fear of that idea being stolen. I just wanted to ask, how would you advise those who are fearful of their idea either being stolen or just researching it, or even just the fear of it being a dumb idea?
Yeah. So first of all, no dumb ideas. You should work with a circle where everybody respects that. So, and frankly, I want dumb ideas because those are probably some of the ideas that are going to be great ones, where I think, there's not going to be, there's no way this is going to be. Oh yeah, well that spurs an idea that then spurs another idea. So, no dumb ideas. And then, yeah, you're right. Fear about how it can be stolen. It goes back to that security mindset. So, again, my day-to-day job is, cybersecurity. So I've always got to have that security first mindset. So, all right, make sure I'm using, secure search engines. So don't use Google, don't use ChatGPT. Like I said, use some of the ones that aren't, logging your search history. That's what I recommend, like DuckDuckGo. All right, if I'm want to ideate, use local stuff if you can. and just abstract things a bit further. So there's ways you could protect it. Just be careful about what information you're putting in which public spaces.
I think the thing I'd add to that is don't go it alone. You don't have to invent alone. Find one other person, and maybe that person has a friend that they trust. Make sure you're with a trusted team. I trust my guys in Guadalajara. I send them an email and I write up, here's what I'm doing. And they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Right. And I trust they're not going to go tell other people. They'll help me get the inventions done. So find your trusted team. I mentioned Lynn Han, he was my trusted team member for a long time. And together we wrote 40 some odd, patentable ideas. So it was just a matter of getting a small 1 or 2 people that you trust, that you can say, yes, I want to co-invent with them. And you talk about the ideas with them, and you don't, expose them out on the tools, don't expose them anywhere outside of your local hard drive, and just make sure you're keeping your things to yourself. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. No other questions? Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you to Mike and Romelia. Thank you for sharing your experience.